Welcome back for another class. We've got a fairly challenging class strength-wise today. So do listen to your body, feel free to stop, have a rest, do any of the relaxation exercises such as spinal rotations, etc. whenever you feel like you need to. So we're going to get started with the Sphinx, as I call it, the leg pull prone. And I'll go through a few different variations of that today. But we'll start in our usual position with the elbows underneath the shoulders. The shoulders are locked down. I'm looking between my hands and I've peeled my hips off the floor. I've got that natural curve through my lumbar spine. My gluteus maximus and hamstrings are relaxed. I'm, by the way, assuming you've already done your warm-up, your roll down to push-up, etc. So in this position, I'm imagining there's a steel spike under my belly button. I'm drawing my belly button in strongly towards my spine. And whenever I need a rest, I'll just go into the squash frog. A couple of little ways we can make this a little bit more challenging. One elbow a little bit further away is going to work harder through one sling of obliques. And I'd then have a rest and then I'd do the other elbow. Other ways are curling the toes under and straightening one and then the second leg, keeping your hips and your torso still. You're not locking out the knees. So whenever you need a rest from here, you bring your knees back to the mat first and then bring your hips down to the floor. Have a lovely little relaxation. I'm going to go into a slightly different variation. I'll move off my mat for this one, although you can easily do it on the mat as well. This is similar to the swimming, and a bit like what I was just demonstrating a moment ago with straightening out one leg at a time and then bringing them back in. We can curl the toes under, straighten one leg, straighten the second. We're obviously doing a straight arm and straight-legged Sphinx now. I can hold it here for just a single in-breath if I like, and then I breathe out and out as I bring the legs back. Curl the toes under if they're not already there, and start again. So just taking your time, keeping your torso as still as you can, not locking out the elbows, not locking out the knees, and you can of course hold it here for longer if you wish. There are other variations where we could make it harder in this position, but I'm not going to show you those today. I'm going to come back from this position and I'm going to do a little thread the needle stretch in an all fours position. So I'm going to take my right hand, place the palm towards the ceiling, curl the fingers away from the mat, and then just thread down and bring, in this case, my right cheek, my right ear down to the mat. I can think of stretching out further with this hand, in this case towards the camera. I'll breathe in as I come back, and I'll curl the left fingers up as I thread on the other side. So it's a nice rotational exercise. I'd normally do a couple at least in each direction. So this is the thread the needle stretch, not to be confused with the thread the needle, which we can do with our right angle triangles. We've got a couple of hip exercises to do. In fact, we've got a few hip exercises to do today. And we're going to start with lying on our side, and we're going to do some side lying circles. Now with this particular exercise, I'll just move a bit further up. I'm going to mimic what the leg's doing with the arm as well. But if in doubt, as usual, forget about the arm and just worry about the leg. I'm going to straighten out this leg. And once I've straightened out, I'm going to move even further up so you can see what my foot's doing. Once I've straightened out this leg, I'm going to internally rotate. This knee on the floor is bent, and I'm going to try to keep my torso relatively still. Circle 3 times, maybe 5 if you feel awesome, in a forward direction. And then I'll do 3 or so in a reverse direction. I'm going to show you this side on in a moment as well. Then after you've done about 3 or maybe 5, bring the leg into neutral. Again, 3 to 5 in a forward direction. So I'm not really taking that leg much, if at all, behind the line of the body. And then 3 to 5 in a reverse direction. And of course, it doesn't really matter which way is forward and which way is reverse. You can work it out for yourself. And then I'll go into external rotation, 3 to 5 in a forward direction, and 3 to 5 in a reverse direction. I'm then going to bring the leg into neutral and just do some gluteal lifts. So this is obviously excellent for your rotator cuff muscles of your shoulder as well. Now before we move on to the next exercise, I just want to show you what that does look like side on. So if I'm in internal rotation, I'm like so, and I'm circling around. Change direction. If I'm in neutral, I'm circling around. And if I'm in external rotation, again, I'm circling around and changing directions. The gluteal lifts is pretty much in line with the body. When you finish doing that, we're going to switch the leg position around. We're going to bend this leg and straighten out this leg, and we'll continue doing some lifts, but this time it's the leg on the floor. This is adductor lifts. Don't let that leg rest every time it comes back to the mat. We want to keep these inner thigh muscles under tension. So, again, just coming up. This knee can be rested on the floor. I do like to keep the hips level, and stacked is what I mean to say. But if you are slightly rolled forward with your hips, you'll still get an excellent workout through those inner thigh muscles. So we're working through a group of 5 muscles, quite bulky, a couple of those, in the inside of your thigh. Don't lift the legs so high that you feel like the side of your waist is coming towards the floor. So just 1 or 200 more of those, and we're going to roll onto our back, and we're going to do some shoulder bridge lifts. And today I'm going to talk about doing the pretend extend, and that'll make more sense once I start demonstrating. So, heels, just a reminder, with the shoulder bridge exercise, we usually have them rather than 90 degrees at the knee. We usually have our heels a little bit closer towards our buttocks. The closer your heels are towards your buttocks, the more you're going to work through your buttocks and the less you'll work through your hamstrings. So, coming up. And how do you tell if your heels are too close? Well, if you come up and your knees are sort of jutting out like that, you've come too close. Another way of checking that your feet are the same distance away from your buttocks is to bring your feet together, like so that the inside of your ankles are touching. Take your heels out, and then take the balls of your toes out. And that should give you a lovely hip width apart. So what I'm going to do, I'll stay in this position to demonstrate, is I'm going to lift up. Now here, instead of kicking a leg out like I'm doing now, coming back and maybe switching to the other leg, I'm going to pretend I'm going to kick. I'm going to transfer most of my weight across to, in this case, my left leg, this one over here. And as I do that, I'm getting ready to kick the right leg out, but I don't actually lift it off the floor. Now I'm going to transfer the weight across to the right, prepared to kick the left leg out, but don't kick it out. So I can keep doing that pretend extend. So what I'm doing is, normally when you do an extend, you've got to shift all of the weight across to one foot so you can kick the other one out. Otherwise your hips will tilt, they'll tip. Whereas with this one, you're transferring 60, 70, 80, maybe 90% of the weight across to one leg before you switch. This is really good if your SIJs are locked up, and it's an easier variation, but you still get most of the benefit of the exercise. When you finish doing those shoulder bridge lifts with your extensions, and we've got various ones we can do of those, we're going to move into our scissors. For the scissors, a reminder, multiple ways of making it easier, multiple ways of making it harder. I'm going to float, in my case, both legs, one at a time, to coffee table. I'm now going to make it a bit harder. How can I make it harder? I could have a bigger angle under the knee, like so. I could still keep my normal coffee table doing that. And I could still scissor, like so, maintaining that angle at my knee. Closer you come to the floor, the harder it is. And further away, coffee table is harder as well. If I do it slower, it is always going to be harder. And if I do a block of one leg over and over again, that's harder than doing what I'm doing now, which is alternating between legs. Another option is scissors of the legs. So alternate or crisscrossing legs, which I quite like. Rest time. You've got plenty of options here. Drawing the knees up to the chest, round the clock stretch, or just stopping and holding this position. I can tell I'm in neutral pelvis here by what I can feel across the back of my pelvis and sacrum, as well as my rib cage, so I know that curve is the same, but if in doubt, always bring the feet back to the floor, find your neutral pelvis, and we'll go again with our scissors. I'm going to straighten out one leg a lot straighter, and that's the scissoring leg today. As I start to fatigue, I can cheat a little bit and use my hand or my fingertips to help support the other leg. If I don't need to, I won't worry. No change of alignment, no doming of your tummy, no discomfort through the lumbar spine. I'm going to do the whole set just with this right leg scissoring. Have a little rest, and then do another set with the left leg scissoring. Maintaining that angle at the knee the same, which in this case it's relatively straight, that leg. when you've done enough of those, and you're the best judge of that, have a rest. We're going to do some spinal rotations next, if my memory serves me right. Dropping the knees to the left, rolling the head to the right. Take your time, you can hold the end of that range. Remember, we're breathing to the base of the rib cage. Our lateral thoracic breathing, or our width wrap breath. So we need to roll over onto our other side and finish off our side lying circles, followed by our adductor lifts. So again, I'm going to demonstrate so that you can see what my leg is doing. Internal rotation. Remember, this leg is bent to about 90 degrees. I've got my good alignment, by the way, always thinking about my alignment. So I've got that natural curve in my spine, my hips are stacked, and I'm going to try to keep them as nice and still as I can. And I am in internal rotation with both my arm and my leg. As I rotate, several times in a forward, several times in an anti-forward direction. Corset muscles are engaged, of course. I'm going to come into neutral. Toes and thumb will be pointing forward and continue. Again, excellent work for the rotator cuff muscles of your shoulder. Don't forget to change directions. And I'll come into external rotation now. We'll then finish off with the gluteal lifts. So this is predominantly going to be working through the gluteal muscles. I'm going to come into neutral, up and down. If you need to have a little rest and maybe rub the hip a little bit before you start your gluteal lifts, of course, do so. And we're going to switch the legs around and go straight into our adductor lifts. I'm continuing to work through supraspinatus, that rotator cuff muscle that's sometimes referred to as the shopping bag muscle. It's one that gets a bit sore when you're carrying heavy shopping bags, when your car is parked miles away. And we'll give you a stretch through these adductor muscles in a moment after we've done our normal pretzel stretching. So I'm going to go into my pretzel stretching now. And one of those pretzel stretches that we would normally do for the gluteals is this one where we draw this ankle and foot up and push this knee away. Deep lateral rotators, we come across like so. But another one that's quite nice is to get into this set of gluteals, I can rotate my knees to the right, pick up the right foot, and then place the weight of that ankle on top of this knee. I can add the weight of my right hand as well, and I'll feel it not just through the side of the hips, but also, as usual, through the side of the lower back waist. It's a very specific stretch. The rule of thumb with stretching is the more specific it is, the slower you want to go into it, and the slower you want to come out of it. I'm going to use this hand, the right hand, to lift the legs back out of the stretch, nice and gently. Otherwise, I'm asking these muscles to actually draw me back. And they've just had a stretch, and they really don't like that. It's not very nice to them. So this is just another variation for stretching through your hips. There are a lot of different stretches. You'll probably know a few of your own, and whatever works for you, go for it. Just using my out breath to try to sink a bit deeper into the stretch. I'm going to use this hand to help lift the legs back up. Getting into my adductor muscles. I'm going to go into the butterfly position. Soles of my feet touching, dropping my knees out to the side. Again, I can add the weight of the arms, and that'll help me sink a bit deeper into this inner thigh stretch, the adductor stretch, each time I breathe out. I mentioned there was 5 muscles here in each leg. You're stretching through 4 of them. One of them crosses the knee joint, and it won't be getting a stretch at the moment, but all the other ones will. This is a great position, as you know, to check on your alignment. It's also a great position to work through pelvic floor. So let's do some little pelvic floor, little pulses today. So normally I think of taking the elevator from the basement up to the lobby. We're going to take it all the way up to the 10th floor, and then just drop it a couple of floors, then take it back up to the 10th floor, drop it a couple of floors. And I'm just going to keep doing that while I enjoy my stretch through my inner thigh muscles. I'm also comparing the tension I can feel through these muscles as well. As you're doing all these little pelvic floor lifts, you shouldn't notice any engagement at all through your love handles. They should be nice and relaxed. So the pelvic floor muscles, your pubococcygeal muscles, they are the muscles that will stop the stream when you go to the ladies or gents for number one. They're the muscles that stop gas. It is a lifting and squeezing that you should be feeling. So excellent stretch through this area, excellent work through pelvic floor. We are going to, I have no idea, I've completely forgotten what we're going to do next. We are going to, oh goodness me, right angle triangles. It is the paint the rainbow variation today. Lovely movement exercise, but it's quite hard. There's 4 different levels or 4 different variations we can do of this one, and I will talk you through them and I'll show you some different angles as well. Now the basic one is bent arm, bent legs. And I prefer the straight arm, and we'll get to that shortly. So, shoulder locked down, elbow directly underneath. And for this particular one, we're going to start from that hypotenuse, that straight line position from pelvis to head. And as I breathe out, I'm going to arch through these elastic muscles. So I'm going to crunch these underside muscles, lengthen these ones, and I'm working in the frontal plane. So if I was against a wall, my back of my left and right shoulder, the back of my left and right hip would be still gliding along that wall. Breathing out as you paint the rainbow, breathing in. Now when I do this normally, I watch my hand and then I come back. Now, I've got bent legs. I could do this with straight arm as well. Shoulder is locked down. Don't have the arm directly vertical, have it a little bit further away, but it's not perpendicular to the body or to the floor. Now we can go banana shaped with our spine. I can feel a really lovely eccentric loading through these side muscles as they stretch. Hips are not touching the floor. I'll breathe in as I come to the straight line. Breathe out as I paint the rainbow. Breathing in, breathing out. Now, both of these variations can be done with straight legs. I don't generally do the straight-legged bent arm one. You just don't get a lot of movement, which is what I'm demonstrating now. But I do, it's quite tough, do the straight arm, straight legged. My top foot is in front of the other foot, so the leg that's closer to the ceiling, and I'll go banana shaped, breathing in, and then breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Not locking out through the knees, not locking out through the elbows. I'm going to show you the bent knee one side on, so you've got a bit of an idea what I mean about, just get myself square onto the camera, about not twisting through the torso. So this is the bent arm, and with the straight arm, I'll come bananas, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in. And we're going to relax down, do our chest release next. I will demonstrate that exercise on the other side where I've got my feet closer to the camera as well, just for a slightly different angle for you. But let's just move into a nice mobility exercise. Thoracic rotation, ribcage rotation. And then we're going to add the chest release part, which is when we straighten the arm out. You can hold and enjoy. I'll just let you enjoy that for a moment or two while I have a drink of my water. So we've done most of the tough strength exercises now. We do have to finish off the right angle triangle shortly on the other side. And we've got one more tough one with our legs at the 100 position. And that's coming up next. So in a moment, I'll get you to roll back onto your back. We're going to do our double leg stretch. Now, double leg stretch is a really hard exercise, but we can make it easier. We can make this actually quite achievable, even for beginner students. So I'm going to spin around because I need to be on this side shortly to do my right angle triangles. So with this particular one, I'm going to float, find my neutral pelvis, engage my core muscles, float one, 2 legs to coffee table. I can use my hands to assist a little bit here. And to start off with, I'm going to breathe out, release my hands from my knees, and just straighten out just a little bit on the out breath. Breathe as I come back. This is the easier variation. Breathing out, breathing in. You should very, very quickly work out that the more you straighten those knees away, the feet away from your shoulders, the harder it is. So obviously it's quite a bit harder now. No doming, no loss of alignment. Staying relaxed through your shoulders and arms. And the more you straighten those legs out, the harder it is. Slowing it down. And reaching out a little bit more horizontally like I'm doing now will also make it harder. Again, you can use your hands to help support your legs and have a rest, of course, for a little or as long as you need. With the larger movements, I will tend to do what I call pulling up my socks and knocking off my sombrero, circling the arms out, and then I come back. Breathing's in time with what your legs are doing. Breathing out, breathing in. And round the clock stretch is awaiting you. Once you have done a few more of those probably, we will return the feet to the floor and we'll continue with that movement by doing our pelvic clocks. So an excellent mobility exercise for that lumbar spine and all the little muscles there. Sometimes clockwise, then a few anti-clockwise and so on. We have got right angle triangle, otherwise known as side bend, by the way, for most Pilates instructors, in fact, probably all of them. So, shoulders locked down, elbows underneath. We started with our beautiful hypotenuse, hence why I call it the right angle triangle. And we're going to breathe out as we create that arch through these undersided muscles. And we're just working that frontal plane, sliding those shoulders and hips along that wall. Straight arm. Going bananas with your spine, but not resting the hip on the floor. Shoulder stays low. If you do the straight-legged variation, the top leg is forward. You'll breathe out as you go bananas. Breathe in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. But make it nice and smooth and flowing. Again, I'm going to show you side on. I'll just bring my mat up a little bit because I like my knees to be on the mat when I am doing this exercise with bent legs. Get myself square on for you. So bent arm first. Straight arm. Going bananas. Coming up. And the feet. This will give you a chance to see what I'm doing with my feet. So this is the top leg. I'm going to do this with straight arm. And into our chest release. Quite a hard exercise, that last one we just did. So it's nice to relax a little bit now with this exercise. So that's the end of the strength exercises. We've predominantly got stability and mobility to finish our class today. Feel that length through the crown of your head, rotating that rib cage around that imaginary broomstick handle that's running up your spine, touching the back of your head all the way down to your tailbone. You're rotating your rib cage around that broomstick handle. And then we'll straighten the arm. I'm going to do my circles on this side. Maybe hold that range. Maybe throw in some rotations of my humerus bone, my upper arm bone. Just one or two more of those. We're going to be doing our shoulder bridge roll next, which I'm really looking forward to. I really like it. So, lying on my back. And remember, initiating through your hip extensor muscles, glute max and hamstrings. So feeling like you're pushing your feet away from your buttocks as you flatten out through that lumbar spine. And that might be all you do. Take a breath in and then breathe out and roll back. You might have your hands resting on your thighs like I'm doing, or on the floor, and that generally will help you to stop shifting weight left to right, like the training wheels on your bike. But when you don't need those training wheels, we take them off. And we just try to stabilize and balance without them. Your spine is like a bicycle chain. You're going to lay one link at a time back onto the floor, then roll away from the mat through the lumbar spine, and then we'll continue on the next out breath. So just continue with that. We've just got a couple more, and then we're going to finish off with our last two exercises on our side. We've got side kick, then pure clams. So I feel I've forgotten something. I forgot to do swan dive. Goodness me, how did I do that? Anyway, we'll fix that up in a moment. So, side kick. Lying on our side and floating those legs off the mat. Maybe, if you do need to keep this hand on the floor for a bit of stability, that's okay. Just have as little weight as possible through those fingertips. Just the gentlest pressure, a touch, you'll find will actually help you to stay nice and stable. My hips are lovely and stacked, shoulders are stacked. I'm just going to kick the leg forward as I breathe out, breathe in as I come back. Remember, the legs are about 10 degrees forward of the body, palm to the ceiling of this arm. So we're not using this arm to help stabilize, we're not pushing to the floor like I'm doing now. Good. So one or two more of those. I'm just looking at my notes here. So I was supposed to do the swan dive after the first side of right angle triangle and chest release, and the double leg stretch after I'd finished it. That's okay. And pure clams. That leg is in line with the body. This leg, we're going to bend to about 90 degrees. It won't matter because it's going to change anyway. Hips can be stacked, or you can roll that hip slightly forward. We're going to work through those back pocket muscles, our deep lateral rotators, and I'm going to just open up the clam several times. Several, might be 2, it might be 6. It really depends on each position, because in some positions you're going to find that you're actually quite strong and it's really easy. In other positions you're going to feel quite weak and it will feel really hard. I'll tend to want to focus more on the ones where I feel weaker, trying to strengthen my weaknesses more so than strengthening my strengths. So every few repetitions, like I said, it could be 2, it could be 6, just change that foot and knee position around. Sometimes you'll have the heel quite close to the other knee, like I'm doing now, and the knee will be bent at about 90 degrees. Other times the leg will be virtually straight, and you'll feel like you're barely moving at all. I can feel muscles working under my hand, and that's not just the deep lateral rotators. I'm also working through the more rearward fibers of my glute medius, which is one of those gluteal muscles that lift the leg up. So known as the posterior fibers of your glute med. So we're working through those as well, and I can feel those working underneath my hand. You can also dig in with your thumb or your fingers, and you'll certainly feel some muscles working in there. So continue with this. I did forget to do the swan dive earlier, as I mentioned, so we're going to do the swan dive now. I don't want you to go away without it. And letting myself sink into the floor, which feels incredibly good right now, to be honest. Engage my corset muscles and extending through the neck and sliding my fingers down as I extend through my rib cage. Take a breath in and then breathe out and come back to the mat. You can engage through the lumbar spine. You can engage through your hip extensors. Relax in the opposite order. We can add external rotation of our arms. Still thinking about drawing my belly button away from the mat. So 1 or 2 more of your swan dives. Excellent exercise. I try to incorporate into every single class I teach, along with my chest release. And I'm going to roll over onto my other side now and do my side kick. And we'll do the hip rolls last. That's when we were going to do the hip rolls. So, floating the legs off the floor and comparing this side to the other. Most people will find one side is a little easier than the other. Movement doesn't have to be big. Remember, it's all about just getting to that point where you feel a little bit unstable. You don't need to be shaking around like a leaf on a windy day. Just get that little bit of instability and then come back. Generally, I want you to do this quite slowly. There are times where it's actually quite good to do a couple of fast ones, but do all the slow ones first. And I'm going to have a little drink while you finish that last one, and we'll go into our pure clams next. It is important to keep your fluids up. So pure clams, I'm lying on my side, leg is bent. I'm going to move up a bit further so you can see. And I didn't do it on the other side, but I can be doing exactly the same movement through my shoulder as well, working through my external rotator cuff muscles. I can change the arm position the same as I change the knee and the foot position, or you might just keep exactly the same angle at your elbow. The main thing I want you to focus on is what is happening at the hip joint. Notice as I do this, I don't just have the ball of the big toe touching the floor. I've got my heel, or at least the inside of my ankle touching the floor at all times. If you're just doing this where you're up on the ball of your big toe, you're going to have a lot of tension through the base of your foot, through your arch, and I don't want that. Ideally, you're breathing out as you're opening the clam and breathing in as you're closing, but at the end of the day, just don't hold your breath. Keep breathing. So just 1 or 2 more, and I'm going to get you to move again into your pretzel stretches. And we've got one final exercise to finish off the class, and that will be our hip rolls. So we did a lot of strength work through the bulk of the class today, and then we just started to ease off towards the end with chest release and these other exercises we're doing now. So for our hip rolls, I'm just going to change my mat position. I do like you to see what is happening with my legs and also my hips. So I don't want to be rolling my hips left to right. So imagine there's a plate on your tummy with a marble right above your belly button. Be aware what it does feel like when you do roll the marble off your plate. Feel how you're rolling across the back of your sacrum, across your pelvis. Your hands can give that extra feedback to your brain as well. I'm going to start with just doing a knee drop or 2, breathing out as I drop the right knee, breathe in as I bring it back up, and then breathing out as I drop the left knee. Keeping the right knee now nice and still, breathing in as I come up. After this next knee drop, I'll move into my hip rolls. And I'm going to be sliding up, making 2 grooves in the sand before I rotate in and slide in. So just 1 or 2 more of those, and then we're just going to finish off with our pretzel stretch, which is going to get mostly into those deep lateral rotators. As I mentioned before, our 2 main pretzel stretches. The one where you draw this ankle in and push the knee away, more for the gluteals. The one where we get into those deep lateral rotators where we pull the knee across towards the opposite shoulder, lifting the hip off the floor. But The same way as when we did our other pretzel stretches, I showed you that bonus one to get into your gluteals. I'm going to show you a bonus one now to get into your deep lateral rotators. I can take that foot and knee out to the side and roll that knee inwards as I peel the hip off the floor, getting to these back pocket muscles. And a bit like the pure clams, we can change that leg position. I can walk my foot out a little bit, drop that knee in. I might have a different angle up here. And sometimes you'll feel a stretch through more your quads. Depending on the angle will depend on which muscle is tightest across that hip joint. So just look for tight spots, and just because you'll find one and it gets into a different area than the deep lateral rotators doesn't mean that that muscle doesn't want a good stretch as well. Then swap sides. I will just change my angle so you can see a bit more what I'm doing. So I'm just going to take that leg out to the side, dropping it in, and that hip is peeled off the floor, and I can change that foot and knee position around. Change sides now. Sometimes you'll feel like one stretch is quite good for one side of your body, it doesn't seem to work as well for the other. If so, just find another stretch. If I don't really feel much of a stretch through the region, I just move on to a different position. That's a nice one I'm getting right now. And so when you have finished doing that pretzel stretch, that is the end of the class. So I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, it is a quite challenging class. I want you to really make sure that you listen to your body, especially when we're doing these harder strength exercises. Make sure the deep muscles are working underneath when those globals are kicking in. Don't switch the love handles. Don't switch the pelvic floor and your transversus abdominis, your Easter egg muscle. Don't switch them off when the globals kick in. They should be working together. So just a reminder, if you are just working through the globals, you're not doing it correctly. So anyway, until next time, enjoy your Pilates, and I'll see you then.